Hello everyone, this is Motorsport with Dio. Today we are here to discuss the Bahrain GP, the first GP of the 2024 season. What did we learn from that? Well, we learned that Max Verstappen and Red Bull, they are still the team to beat, as we predicted last week. And we had some very nice insight about the performance of the teams, at least on this first race. Now, we have to keep in mind that Bahrain is a very special track, meaning that the degradation is very high. So it's very likely that for the next races, for example, in Jeddah or in Australia, we will actually have different results. Well, what does that mean exactly? Actually, every track on the calendar has different degradation for the tires. That is because of where it is in the world, what temperatures they are on the track, how the asphalt is made. Now, the Sakhir circuit in Bahrain, it is very famous for actually having high degradation, meaning that Red Bull, being very kind to its tires, seems that they have an extra advantage over the other teams, and we feel that in the other tracks of the calendar, things will be a bit closer. Let's do a recap based on each team. So Red Bull, as we said, they took off with a win. They did a 1-2 with Max and Checo. Max, of course, was around 22 seconds in front. Obviously, they had a spotless race. They were very good in qualifying as well, although in qualifying we can see that teams are closer to them. It seems that the new car, at least the foundations work. It's very kind to its tires. It seems that everybody's happy. To my eyes, it seems that this is a car that will also be very strong in most of the tracks this year. Will it be as strong as the RB19? Well, I guess that we have to see along the year. I would say that no, because RB19 was the car that was an evolution of the already successful RB18, and this one is a very new design. So if anything, I would expect next year the RB21 to be as dominant as the RB19. That's just speculation for now. We don't know exactly how this will go. Ferrari, they were actually very strong. I was very surprised by Charles Leclerc on qualifying because he's very strong, but he almost got the pole from Max Verstappen. It was a very good performance for the Italian team, and they seem to have gotten on top of their tire degradation issues. It seems that now they can attack with the car and they can actually be stronger in race trim than they were last year. It seems that, of course, they had some issues with Charles Leclerc with the brakes. The first stint of the race was very hard for him, but it seems that Carlos was very strong. He almost tried to bring the race to Checo. He almost succeeded. It was a very good outing for the Scuderia. We can also imagine that in the next tracks of the calendar, they will be much stronger because, as we said, Bahrain is quite a high degradation track, and we expect Ferrari to be stronger in tracks like, for example, Jeddah or Australia. What we can also say is that Ferrari seems to have better strategy than last year's. It seems that they didn't make any silly mistakes. It seems that they can actually run their power unit for longer. So they're not afraid to also risk with the strategy as they did with Carlos Sainz. Mercedes, well, it was a bit disappointing, let's say, for Mercedes. We were expecting much more from them. Now, the W15 has been dubbed as a actually very balanced car that has solved most of the issues it had last year's. We don't know for sure. I mean, the qualifying trim for Lewis Hamilton was really, let's say, mediocre, while Russell had a very strong qualifying session that came third. In the race, it seems that both Mercedes and both Williams, we will come to that later, were nursing some issues with power unit or brakes. We have to imagine that these issues will not be there for long, but it seems that the car, while it behaves as the team wanted to behave, it's not as strong as we imagined. We can imagine that in the next races, in the next tracks, they will be close to Ferrari. They will battling out for, third, fourth place. But at least in Sakhir, they were one step behind. What we can also see is that Lewis Hamilton had a rough time in the middle of the race trying to fire up his car and his tires. It seems Mercedes was very strong on soft tires, but not as strong as in hard tires. So we have to understand if this trend will go along on the other races. There are many speculations about Mercedes and about what the car managed to do. And I think Toto Wolff said it pretty much well, is that yes, the car is stronger than last year, but it's not as strong as Red Bull or even Ferrari for now. Let's see Jeddah. I think Jeddah will be a very interesting case for the Mercedes car. McLaren. Well, I was a bit disappointed with McLaren. I was expecting them to be fighting out with Ferraris and Mercedes, but it seems that they didn't. They didn't have the issues that Mercedes had with their power unit. That was good news for them. but they didn't seem to be able to get close to the Mercedes car of George Russell. What we can say is that maybe the Sakir track is an outlier for their car, meaning that in other tracks we expect them to be closer to the competition. It seems that all the steps they made forward last year carried over for this year, but the competition meanwhile also progressed, so they have to catch up again. It seems though that they will be fighting a lot for podium places, for the points regularly. It seems that the car is in a good place, and in some tracks they will be maybe closer to the competition or even closer to Red Bull. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, they were a bit surprised with the pace. They said they were waiting to be a bit less strong than they were. That remains to be seen. But I think that McLaren have a strong car for this year, and I think we will see them fighting out with Ferraris and Mercedes. Aston Martin. Well, Aston Martin is nothing like they were last year. Last year, Fernando Alonso managed to get third place. They seemed like the second best team on the grid. This year was a bit different. They were both in the points, 9th and 10th, but it seemed that they were not able to get close to McLaren or Mercedes. It seems that the car is actually not so bad. This is what Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll is saying. In qualifying, Fernando Alonso managed a 6th place, which is actually a good result for them. But in the race, they dropped down to 9th and 10th, as we said. Now, why this happened? We suspect that the car they developed for this year is actually a very strong qualifying car. But on the race, they need to work on the degradation and on the straight line spin. We have to see that on other tracks like Jeddah when they have fast corners. And maybe there the car will suit better to the drivers. For sure, it's not as strong as it was last year. Sauber. No one expected Sauber to be as good as they were in the race in Bahrain. In the qualifying, they were not so good. It seems that they were not able to fire up their tires very well. But in the race, the car came alive. Valtteri had a bit of a bad luck again in the pit stop, but actually Zhou almost finished in the points. This is great for them because it seems that the car, while it's not really strong or as strong as they were expecting, it's actually good in the race, especially in a high degradation track like the Bahrain one. We cannot really understand whether this form will continue in other tracks. We will see that, for example, in Jeddah or Australia. But it seems that the car is not as bad as we expected, which is actually good news for them. RB. I would say that RB was a bit disappointing all over the weekend. On the qualifying, Yuki lost the Q3 for just 7 milliseconds, which is a pity. In the race, it seems that the car was not as strong as they hoped for, given the fact that they actually using the RB19. We were also hoping them to be right around 10th or 8th place. It seems it's not the case though. And it seems that we have some internal fighting inside the team between Yuki and Danny. Our channel does not really support gossiping, so we will not expand on that. But actually what we can say is that neither of the drivers seemed to be very happy at the end of the race because the car did not seem to perform as they hoped for. Now, do we think that Daniel Ricciardo could actually challenge for the 10th place? Well, it was a bit hard to do, and even if he had passed the right time, I would think that that would not happen. But of course, we will see that on the next races. I really want to see them in traditional tracks, like for example Imola or Zandvoort, to see exactly how this car behaves in different configurations. Haas. It was a big surprise that actually Nico Hülkenberg was able to get 10th and advance to Q3 in the qualifying, but in the start of the race he made a mistake. He actually crashed into Stroll. He destroyed his race. Of course, Lance was able to recover to 10th. It seems that the car is much better than it was last year. It seems that they have gotten on top of their degradation issues. It seems that the car behaves the way they wanted to behave. Of course, the car is not fast, but we can see them fighting on the hinges of the points in every race. Now, we have to understand that Haas is a team with the smallest budget, as we said, so every point they get is a hard-earned point. So we have to root for them as much as we can. I think that they will have a good year. I'm not sure if they will be able to get something more than 10th or 9th place. I see them fighting with the Alpines or with Sauber, but let's see the next races to see how this will actually develop. Let's go over to Williams now. Williams' car seemed that it was not really as strong as last year in qualifying. They seem to have gotten again on top of some of the issues they had, but the car did not seem strong on this track. Sakir is a special track. We expect them to be stronger in other tracks. The first indication of that will be next week in Saudi Arabia. Logan Sargent was again, let's say, not so strong. Alex Albon did his best. I think he took everything that he could out of this car. In my opinion, Williams will have a very up and down year, but of course the 7th place is still visible and doable for them. Alpine. Last week I said that I don't believe that Alpine would be that bad. Well, I was wrong. Actually, it wasn't bad. Both in qualifying and in the race, the Alpine car was nowhere. Both Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly were struggling all over the qualifying and all over the race to make this car go somewhere, but it seems that the car is overweight and it doesn't have a lot of power. These are issues that the Alpine engineers, they have to come on top of, but it's not something easy. If we look at the difference in time, we will see that actually the Alpine is not so far away in qualifying from the other teams. But on the race, this is a different story. It seems that they have a long way to go, and I'm not sure how this year will be for our two beloved drivers. Now, some news at the Alpine camp, they tell us they had some very high profile resignations. We will see how this will affect or not the team, but of course Alpine is ready to have a very tough season ahead of them. That was all for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Well, we didn't have a lot of expectations for something else to happen, but it seems that it was another day on the office for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Now, I understand that some people will say that it was boring. It kind of is, but actually I think that the next races will be much better because the tracks will have different characteristics and the teams will be much closer together on the pack. Will Max win the 2024 championship? Well, it's very likely, but of course, surprises can happen. Stay tuned to Motorsports with Dio to learn everything about all the coming races.